Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for participating in this on-the-record briefing with Special Envoy for Sudan, Tom Perriello. We have a little less than 30 minutes for this briefing, so quickly, sir, over to you.
Thank you so much. It's been an absolutely incredible few days with the delegation that is here. We are extremely seized with the urgency of the crisis in Sudan. As a delegation of folks from the United Nations, the African Union, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, ourselves, and the Swiss, we came together with an understanding that we had a couple of million people facing famine conditions and starvation, and over 20 million people who are facing an acute food shortage. We are looking at a number of issues related to humanitarian assistance and civilian protection, and of course, cessation of hostilities in keeping with the Jeddah declarations committed by the parties. Our first priority was to look at how to open 3 roads that collectively would ensure that 20 million people who are currently cut off completely or largely from food and medicine would be able to get that relief. That was the Adre border crossing, the Daba Road, and the opening of Sennar Junction in Sennar State. We've been working through the night as a negotiating delegation team in a real model that has not been tried before and has proven to be quite effective on working through these issues. Along with many humanitarian and diplomatic colleagues around the world, we are now on the precipice of Adre being open with over 100 trucks ready to roll as early as tomorrow on something that would often take weeks and weeks, if not months. And that means we could be seeing food and medicine reaching areas like the Zamzam camp, where over 400,000 people, well over 400,000 people have been facing starvation and famine. That's what we're here to do. We are here to put results on the board. We are actively negotiating every day with both the RSF and the Army. The RSF delegation remains here, and we have met with them, and we have worked virtually through phones with the Army to accelerate progress that saves lives for the Sudanese people. We are going to continue to work through the night on those efforts, not just with the 3 roads that could mean millions and millions, over 20 million or nearly 20 million people having access to that, but continuing to work on important issues of civilian protection and, of course, cessation of hostilities, and we will continue to do so. So it's been a pretty electric experience. It's been an experiment in a new form of negotiations that's proving very successful, and we're going to keep going at least through this week to continue to put on results that matter to the Sudanese people. So with that, I will hand over to you, Ted. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Just given the logistics of so many people on this call, managing a chat would be untenable. So we've solicited your questions in advance. And for the first question, I'm going to read from Nicholas Barrio from the Wall Street Journal. What do you make of the opening of the Adre border crossing? While the gesture allows agencies to shore up humanitarian deliveries from observers, some observers say this is too late for aid groups due to low levels of funding, as well as high levels of acute malnutrition across the country.
So we very much welcome the decision of the Sovereign Council to open the Adre border crossing. This has been a top urgent demand and request from the international community for many months. Those who work on this sort of issue every day know that once that announcement's made, there's still about 10 things that need to happen. That could be the difference between whether aid trucks start to roll in a few days or in a few months or never. And I think what's been incredible about this particular room is when that announcement comes down, we have the OCHA people represented in the room, and they can say, here's what we need from RSF, here's what we need from the Army, here's what we need from the government ministries. Here's what we need from lawyers, and we can all start working the phones in that room. And it's a group of people that are extremely dedicated to getting food and medicine to the people of Sudan as quickly as possible. We all believe much more needs to be done in terms of humanitarian aid and aid access. As I said, one of our top priorities this week is to get these 3 different arteries open, the Daba Road, the Sennar Axis, and Adre, particularly with the roads, the rainy season having closed off other access through, say, the south or through Tine. This is World Humanitarian Day. We know that there are many humanitarian workers who've lost their lives in the last year, in fact, the most on record. We know there are many Sudanese who've been killed in the last year, plus of this war trying to deliver food and medicine to their neighbors, their family members. And we believe the best way to honor them on World Humanitarian Day is with our actions. And we are going to keep working, again, 24/7 around the clock to do what we can to get this access open. And we have a long way to go to meet the standards of what the Sudanese people deserve.
Thank you. The next question is a multi-part question from Hetham Osman from the Sudan Tribune. What is the position of the Sudanese Army's participation in the Geneva talks? Why was a delegation sent to Cairo after the failure of the previous Jeddah talks? And what is the agenda that will be presented in Cairo? I'd also like to ask about the Army's request to refuse to participate in the Swiss talks due to the presence or participation of the UAE. Has the Army officially objected to the UAE's participation?
Well, first of all, I think the most important thing is that this model is working. We are actively moving forward in conversation with the Army and with the Rapid Support Forces every day, in fact, every hour, both as a team and as individual delegations. And we've been really pleased at the responsiveness to that. So while there are some continued issues of communication that we will continue to work on, the reality is that we are getting it done now because that's what the Sudanese people want. What they want is to see Jeddah implemented. They want to see international humanitarian law respected. And we've been able to see some major commitments made by both the Army and the Rapid Support Forces over the last few days. We believe that can continue because the response from the Sudanese people has been very positive. The key, though, is the results. It's not an announcement on paper. It's whether food and medicine is getting to the people who need it most, whether we're able to get commitments on civilian protection, vacating of hospitals, schools, and homes. And we will continue to engage with both parties in whatever way we can that produces results for the Sudanese people, wherever we can. But this team is going to continue negotiating as a unit. It's been really incredible and inspiring to see this mix of countries, multilaterals, and technical experts working through the night to try to be responsive to what we're hearing from the Sudanese people. And we're going to keep doing that and keep engaging the parties in with the wonders of modern technology. And where we can do that in person, we will accomplish more. If the Army delegation was here, I guarantee we would be producing more results for the Sudanese people on humanitarian access and on civilian protection than we can do by phone. But it was very clear from President Biden and Secretary Blinken that we were going to do what we could for the Sudanese people. We had hoped these talks would start in April, then May, then June. The Army did not want to come to those talks. We will continue to move forward on results that matter. And we hope that everyone, including the Army, will see that this is something the Sudanese people will respond very positively to if we can help together to get these roads open and get access for those who are the most vulnerable.
Next question from Nafisa El Tahir at Reuters. This is a two-part question. The first part you've already kind of touched on, but I'll repeat her question in full. The Sudanese Army has made several conditions for its participation in talks. One of them is to only deal with the United States and Saudi Arabia as mediators and the removal of the UAE. Is there any possibility of reconvening the talks without the UAE or additional observers in general? The second part, as the talks have commenced, the RSF has continued its assaults on El Fashir, Omdurman, and the southeast of the country with high casualty counts. What does that say about the force's seriousness in engaging in Geneva or talks elsewhere? Is there something else that has been brought up in meetings with the RSF, and what is their reaction?
So it is true that, of course, that the Army and President Burhan have raised different concerns, a rotating set of concerns, and we take those seriously. And we want to be clear that we would be in a much stronger position to deliver results for the Sudanese people if we had a formal in-person delegation from the Army. But as you've seen, we are moving forward and negotiating on a daily and hourly basis because it's the results that matter. And I think that leaders in the Army and in the government know that. These are their neighbors, their family members. And when it comes to what we're trying to do here, which is to produce results that implement the JEDA agreements that already exist on access to food and medicine and civilian protection, these are the things that the Sudanese people want. So we're very pleased that relations continue. We are moving forward with the results the Sudanese people want. I think the Army has taken some very important steps in the last few days. I think those have been appreciated by the international community and the Sudanese people, and I think we can continue to build on that momentum. But what's clear is we could do more for the Sudanese people if an Army delegation was here, and we will continue to be in conversation to try to make that happen. And we believe that would be a good thing for everyone involved and for these efforts to implement JEDA and international humanitarian law. But we are also focused on how, at a moment of famine and crisis, we can protect the most vulnerable people. And even if a cessation of violence is not reached, it is very important in Sudan to reset the idea that there are norms and rules, even during war, that apply through both the JEDA declarations and international humanitarian law to the protection of civilians and humanitarian access. And those are the things we are trying to get those norms reset in conversation with both the Rapid Support Forces and the Army, which we are doing again every single hour. We are in communication with both and really trying to use this much more modern approach that is less focused on the formalities of where people sit and more focused on whether people get food and medicine. And I think that's something very much appreciated by the Sudanese people. And the second question was?
About the RSF, continued assaults.
Yes. We are very concerned about ongoing attacks, also on very credible reports of abuse of civilians. And we will continue to push the Rapid Support Forces to accept and abide by their commitments under JEDA and their commitments under international humanitarian law, as well as pushing for a national cessation of violence, national cessation of hostilities. It would be easier to work on the national cessation of hostilities if the Army sent a delegation. But as I said, we're going to continue to look for both unilateral steps from the parties, as well as agreements operationalizing what we've seen. So yes, we continue to be very concerned about that. That's why we'd like to have mediation talks. In the absence of that, we'll continue to work this through the clock, around the clock.
Next question from.
Oh, let me just say, Taylor Garrett is also on the phone, who heads the Sudan Rapid Support Team for the U.S. government. He's one of the leading humanitarian experts in the world, based normally in the region, but he has been up here. I don't think he's slept in at least a week, if not more. And let me invite him in to see if he wants to amend or add to anything that I've said on the previous answers before we go to the go on. So Taylor, thank you for your work around the clock on this effort, and please come in and answer anything on the questions that have already been asked.
Yes, sir. I think on the process that has come into place here to really advocate and support movements on humanitarian issues, I think the technical working group that is formed around the humanitarian access and civilian protection has really been able to refine its points, reach consensus, and then inform the heads of delegation as they develop their points and their advocacy issues. And we've really covered a lot of ground and come to some strong consensus points that now we're acting on with the support of all the heads of delegation. So I think the feedback that I've gotten, and I genuinely feel it myself, is that we have been able to accomplish a lot to really move this agenda forward. The assistance is, as the envoy has said, the assistance is urgently needed. MSF has reported that a child dies in Zamzam camp every 2 hours. So every 2 hours that we cannot get there with the assistance needed, we're risking more lives. And so the Adre opening is just a critical development. We're going to keep pushing on that to see it through and have the assistance reach the people who need it. Thanks, Tom.
Thank you, Taylor. Ben?
All right. Thank you, Taylor. Next question from Agnes Pedrero from AFP. Have there been any breakthroughs in the talks? And if so, what are they? If the Army doesn't intend to come, how long are you going to keep on talking for this round of discussions? And what that means for future mediation efforts?
So we do feel like we have had some success here, but we want to be clear that things like opening the Adre border have been months in the making, with many, many pressure points from around the world and certainly from our OCHA colleagues on the ground and elsewhere. What I think we were able to do was to create kind of a catalyst for action here in August for people all over the world who have been wanting to do more on Sudan, and to be able to work the kind of technical issues that we can as quickly as possible in the way that Taylor mentioned, by bringing those issues in immediately, getting the marching orders we need from the experts and professionals on the ground, being able to work through those diplomatic issues, both with the international component and others. And we want to be clear, we have a lot more asks out to the parties that we are working. Most notably, of course, would be the Daba Road and Sinar access points that would collectively mean that 20 million people in Sudan would have access to food and medicine that did not have it before this. Again, that is a team effort well beyond the group that's in Switzerland, but there is a very, very special energy we have in the room of seriousness on these issues. We did get the Rapid Support Forces to publicly commit to opening the Daba Road. We are working on Sinar. We are working on reciprocity with the Army on the Daba Road agreement, as well as working many, many other issues that we will try to pursue throughout this week and beyond. And I think what we've tried to do is kind of modernize what it means to be working on negotiations. We've talked about them being virtual proximity talks, but there's nothing virtual about the team that's here. It's being in the room across different countries and multilateral institutions and technical experts in one place who share a commitment to getting things done on humanitarian access and civilian protection consistent with the JET agreements and international humanitarian law, that can then be working with the parties together as a team, as well as through our individual delegation contacts. And we think it's working. We're going to continue to push because that's what the Sudanese people want, is to see real progress on these issues of humanitarian access and civilian protection. Obviously, we would like to work on cessation of hostilities. That's much harder without the parties here. And we're going to continue to find all the ways that we can engage with both the RSF and the Army to continue to get results. And we're just a few days into this new model. And we want to continue to build on that, because I think that President Biden and Blinken, tried something new here, which is to say, can you go forward with these sorts of efforts if the parties do not seem stuck, particularly the Army, on coming here over issues? And we've said, let's go work the issues. Let's see what we can do. And I think it's been a really good energy. And again, I think we've seen some really positive steps, from the Army and from the government, and as well as from the RSF. And I think that's really what is going to be the verdict from the Sudanese people. And again, we are just getting started here. But it's been exciting to see this new model come together, and we're going to continue to engage with both the Army and the RSF on behalf of these commitments that exist already under JETA and IHL.
Next question from Imogen Folks from BBC. What concrete outcomes are there from these talks, and what is the next step?
So thanks, Imogen. One of our clear first priorities is to help get 20 million people in Sudan access to food and medicine and services. And that means getting these roads open. So we have prioritized the Daba Road, Sinar Junction, you'll hear me say it over and over again, and the Adre crossing. And of course, for those who've done this for many years, you know that it's not enough to just get an announcement on paper. There are then 10 or 12 things you got to work through. And as Taylor said, if we can get those things worked through in a couple of days instead of a couple of months, that's dozens, hundreds, thousands of lives potentially saved inside Sudan. So one of our clearest goals is to get those 3 access points open. We are pressuring and working with both the Army and the Rapid Support Forces on their commitments there. and then also a broader range of issues under civilian protection, particularly in the area of violence against women. And we've had a lot of progress in those negotiations, but we are not nearly satisfied. We're just getting started on what we hope to accomplish here. And that'll be an ongoing effort, again, with this continuing to build out from this new model, which we think has been effective. But Taylor, do you want to add anything on that element?
Yes, sir. Indeed, these are the operationalization of these different corridors and the different discussions with partners on realizing them fully builds out on the commitments that are being made both by the teams here in Geneva that are pushing on this and then by the parties themselves. So I think there's ongoing work that will happen. As the envoy said, those routes will open up assistance to reach really the heartland of the crisis. Through Greater Kordofan, Greater Darfur, White Nile, Blue Nile, Sinnar, and really another point that we've made clear is the need for both sides to allow assistance to flow to areas controlled by the other side as it moves through their territory. So regardless of territorial control, the assistance has to reach people. Thanks.
Question from Michelle Legrand from Geneva Solutions. The U.S. envoy had pointed already to the delays by SAF as he tried to initiate talks as early as April. Are you worried that the meeting agreed for Cairo is just another delay, or has the last week successfully increased the pressure on SAF to take a meaningful step forward? Second part, has the issue of arms supply been addressed this past week with Egypt and UAE? Who are not only two of the main supporters of the talks, but also of the warring parties? Is wider arms embargoes something that the U.S. is pushing for?
Thank you. So first of all, these negotiations are not just going to continue, they are accelerating. And we are going to continue to do everything that we can from here as a really strong negotiating team that does include parties with a lot of history in the country. We have the United Nations as well that's recently done technical talks and been engaged. The African Union, that's been a key element in so many aspects of this. It's just been an incredible group of people who are, again, pulling all-nighter after all-nighter, trying to work these issues, knowing that every couple of hours there's a baby dying in Zamzam. And if we can get these agreements through and we can get them through faster, that's going to be lives saved in Sudan. We are hoping to see that same seriousness of response from the Rapid Support Forces and the Army. I think they would note that we are working on a very different pace than they may be used to at previous negotiations. This is a life-saving, urgent negotiation, and we are looking for progress on these things. And I think so many people, particularly in the Army, who have family members and neighbors who are in harm's way, understand the desire of the Sudanese people to see progress on these issues of implementation. So this is going to continue. It's going to accelerate. But it is clear that we could get more done and get it done more quickly with an Army delegation here. It does help that process. Again, with the wonders of modern technology and with the many, many months of consultations that have been done across the Egyptians, the Saudis, ourselves, and others, we are really not starting from scratch here. And again, this comes back to the fact that we wanted the talks to start before the April 15th anniversary of the war. So this has been a long time coming, and I think we see that pent up interest in getting some results, which we'll continue to try to do as much as we can. And we, again, we'll see. We have so much to work from with the existing Jeddah declarations and international humanitarian law, and so much to do in terms of the scale of the crisis in Sudan that we imagine we're going to be continue to work on this, for many, many weeks to come. And that we have, I think, a unit that that's working well together. And one of the things we've heard most from the government and the Army is they want to see enforcement and compliance with the agreements that are already there. That's what we're doing. We're doing it every day. And I think that they're seeing that the combination of actors we've brought together is actually part of what's making that work.
Okay, we have time for one more question. Last one from Isabel Seco F, and then maybe with the Spanish News Agency, then sir, maybe you can close it out with your final comments as well. I'd like to know if you plan to continue with this process during the 10 days expected without this the staff's participation. What are your thoughts on this issue?
I'll tell you what, we've actually asked the heads of delegation twice now whether they want to wind up early, and they have been extremely clear that they do not, that they believe we are producing real results together. It's actually been quite electric there. And I think it's also particularly because of an awareness of how acute the crisis is. But there was this sense that the world was going to go to sleep on Sudan in August. And I think our collective interest was to make sure the world was jolted wide awake about the scale of the famine and the violence inside Sudan. And when we can start to see those results with Adre, and not just an Adre announcement, but turning into the trucks and the other things that need to happen that could be moving tomorrow, with there being over 400,000 people starving in Zamzam camp. That's the kind of thing we're going to keep building on. And I think this is a good thing. You know, there's been all this focus on the adversarial issues of the details of traditional negotiations and how that gets set up. And instead, we're going forward with what we talked about doing in terms of results for the Sudanese people on this issue of implementation of Jeddah and international humanitarian law. And we think that we can continue to build on that. And there are so many more issues for us to work, not just in terms of these 3 roads, but issues, again, of the bombing and shelling of civilians, the vacating of hospitals and schools, the issues of violence against women. Again, we do not expect that we will solve all of those issues this week, but if we can make some progress in that, and then we can use that momentum to build towards additional results, it'll be a good thing. I do want to give a huge thank you to our hosts, the Swiss. They've been exceptional in not just hosting us, but I think understanding this was a bit of an experiment, a new experiment and a way of negotiating. And they put up with some of that experimentation at the beginning before it gelled. Now that it's gelling, I think we're in a position to really produce the kind of results that I know President Biden and Secretary Blinken had asked of us. And we will continue to build on that. And then just the colleagues, along with the Swiss, the Egyptians have just been doing exceptional work long before and building up to this, along with, of course, the Saudis, who are such a key, we're the hosts in Jeddah, and that's the foundation on which this is built, along with the Emiratis, the United Nations, the African Union, OCHA. I mean, we really have some of the leading experts in the world in the room. And we have so many other partners that are working phones with us. This is a team effort all over the world. This seems to be one center of gravity, one catalyst for action and progress. But we know, particularly on the ground in and around Sudan, there are so many people that are really just taking great courage and creativity to get these things done. And again, as this is World Humanitarian Day, it's good to remember that many Sudanese have lost their lives in the last 14 months, 16 months of this conflict, and continue to risk their lives every day to try to get food and medicine. We've seen the incredible voice of Sudanese women, including some who are in Geneva, but also all over the country, bringing ideas forward of what we can do to protect lives and end some of these atrocities. I think that's another aspect of what we've been doing. While there's not formal participation in the mediation, we have continued to hear directly from Sudanese inside Sudan, in refugee camps and elsewhere, about their priorities, and bringing that into the room in a way that helps inspire us to focus not on some of the normal things that we get stuck on in diplomacy and that, frankly, some of the headlines are about, of this, that, the other thing. The energy in the room is results. And we know that Sudanese people need a lot more, and we're going to do what we can to make sure that we're seeing food and medicine and services get to all 18 states, see that we can start to create and peel back some of those key elements of human dignity and human security, as well as, of course, working towards that cessation of hostilities. We appreciate that the Army has been very active in this and working towards the things that are priorities for the Sudanese people. We believe we could accomplish more with that delegation here, but I think everyone's seeing now that we're moving forward with the kind of results that I think everybody wants as we move forward. So it's been exciting to see that. But again, we are in a crisis here of epic proportions. When you're talking about 20 million people being in food insecurity with several million in the state of famine, we continue to see this week atrocities against civilians and an expansion of the war. We do think the sooner the parties engage in full mediation for the cessation of hostilities, the better it will be for everyone in Sudan. But we are going to continue to work for those protections that have to be respected even in wartime under both international law and the Jeddah declarations. And that's what we're going to keep working on. So thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. And thank you all for joining virtually. This concludes today's press briefing.